Yo, what's up Terrarians? Long ago, before there were whips, before there were dozens of summon weapons, there was the Slime Staff. Added in 1.2, it was the first summon weapon added to the game, and even with everything added for summoners since then, it is still the weakest. Despite that, I plan on beating Terraria Master Mode using only the Slime Staff. No whips, no Inferno or Thorns potion, that's it. Same rules as my Wand of Sparking only challenge though, I'm not going to let a little accidental damage invalidate things, I'll just do my best to avoid. Now hold on a second, I hear you saying. The Slime Staff is the weakest summon weapon? What about Abigail's Flower, the Finch Staff, or the Flink's Staff? Well, there are a few mechanics you need to know about to know why the Slime Staff is the weakest. The first little known feature is that the Slime Staff causes more immunity frames than the Flink Staff. The Flink's minion can hit targets once every 10 ticks, or 6 times per second, while the Slime minion can only hit targets once every 12 ticks, or 5 times per second. This makes the Flink Staff 20% better than the Slime Staff. The Finch minion can only hit targets once every 15 ticks, or 4 times per second, so it may seem weaker. But the second little known feature that makes the Finch Staff stronger is that it uses local immunity frames as opposed to the Slime Staff and Flink Staff's static immunity frames. This means that no matter how many slime minions you summon, they can only do the same damage per second to a single target because the first slime minion will give the target immunity frames against the damage from all slime minions, while each Finch minion will only give immunity against that specific Finch minion. So being able to get 3 summons without even fighting a boss means that the Finch Staff instantly jumps ahead of the Slime Staff against most bosses. Lastly, the reason why Abigail's Flower is better than the Slime Staff is simply because rather than summoning additional weak minions, it allows the Abigail minion to scale, and quite quickly at that, making it strong enough to deal significant damage even against high defense late game enemies and much higher single target damage than the Slime Staff, which means the Slime Staff is the weakest against single targets. The Finch Staff is only weaker in very rare circumstances. With that out of the way, let's get on to the challenge. I start off by creating a large world on the Celebration Mark X Secret Seed, shuffling through the names until I get the slime-themed world name Vivacious Slime, and get straight to work on gathering money to buy the Slime Staff. I could have also made some setup where slimes kill themselves until they drop a Slime Staff, but I didn't want to rely on something else like lava to deal damage, and thought this would be more interesting. The Celebration Mark X seed has the benefit of generating lots of large trees to scavenge for stuff to sell, as well as giving accessories and weapons from chest loot some of the best modifiers so they sell for quite a bit. The first few days are just scavenging for loot, capturing the odd gnome, avoiding enemies, and making my way as far right as I can get. Also picking up a sandstorm in a bottle from the guaranteed pyramid spawn on this seed. Eventually I finally get the 15 gold I need for the Slime Staff and can start killing enemies. Mere minutes after I start heading back out to explore, I encounter a Pinky which I decide to trap to kill for money, only to have a gold slime spawn seconds later, which I also kill, to get way more money than I expected to have at this point. So after stashing it away, I explore further only to die repeatedly to the Master Mode enemies. This is not an easy challenge. I head into the mines to die one more time before I can start to mine for gold armor and a blood moon starts. By creating an elevated house prior to this, I was able to safely AFK kill the enemies in the hopes of getting a shark tooth necklace, one of the most important accessories for this run. I then get to building a simple boss arena when it's daytime, get bad luck on another blood moon, and decide to hop into my first boss fight against the Eye of Cthulhu, and I don't get anywhere close. The Celebration Mark X seed actually makes it even harder by making the eye much smaller than normal, and so I only deal around 1000 damage before daytime thanks in part to the lack of armor penetration or damage boosts. After a third blood moon I finally get the shark tooth necklace, die several more times grinding for more accessories, gold armor, and buffs, and after a while the game decides to tell me I should be fighting a certain other boss before the Eye of Cthulhu. So I AFK kill the slime rain and begin the first real boss fight, King Slime. I play the fight quite sloppy, take lots of unnecessary damage and almost die a few times, but it's King Slime. The low ceiling on the lower level of my arena slows King Slime down considerably while keeping him grounded, allowing me to get plenty of damage in while making it very easy to turn around. The baby slime minion is not very cooperative though, getting easily distracted by the slimes that King Slime spawns, and generally just getting confused a lot. The fight lasts a little over 5 minutes, so I've sped it up by 5 times, but for future reference, any fights where I'm just standing still are mostly sped up by 10 times, and ones where I'm moving are 5 times as fast. After defeating King Slime, I don't end up getting any really good resources, but I do get the King Slime relic, so I decide I'll be aiming to get all the boss relics since most bosses will give me something to help me with later bosses anyway. But before I fight any more bosses, I craft up a Goblin Battle Standard and summon the Goblin Invasion. I can almost AFK it back at the house, only stopping to manually target the mages and summon my baby slime on them. The princess kills some that teleport into the house, which is some assistance I would have liked to avoid receiving, but it really makes no difference. Compared to the Wand of Sparking only challenge, this is easy even on Master Mode. After the Goblin Invasion, it doesn't take much time to find the Goblin Tinkerer with a Hunter Potion, but afterwards I try fighting the Eye of Cthulhu again, and get a lot closer, but dealing consistent damage is still a struggle. Here's a clip I just felt like sharing where I used a teleportation potion which sent me straight to a chest with a lava charm. I just thought that was neat. But after finally crafting some gold armor, grabbing a bass statue, and preparing some other buffs, I'm now ready to fight the Eye of Cthulhu for real. Thanks to the Celebration Mark 10 seed, I'm able to equip nearly 100% warding accessories from chest loot, in addition to using an iron skin potion, bass statue, gold armor, and having the regen from a campfire, heart lantern, honey, and a regen potion. This way I have more than enough to tank the eye as I just focus on maximizing damage, which is quite hard to do with all the dashing. But once the eye enters its second phase, its defense drops to 0 and I go from dealing an average of 5 damage per hit to an average of 8. Something strange I realized while editing, however, is that for the last 500 health of the Eye of Cthulhu, I was actually dealing up to 24 damage. It seems there's some sort of damage multiplier or negative defense or something at the very end. Shortly after, as I'm preparing houses underground by a convenient fishing spot, I end up killing a Pinky and getting a Celestial Slime Staff, saving me the effort of having to reforge mine unless I really want the other benefits of the Mythical modifier. After that, it's straight into preparations for the Brain of Cthulhu. I build a simple arena and build a setup to cheese the second phase of the boss fight by placing squares of dirt in 3 of the diagonals roughly 12 blocks away to stop the brain from teleporting for 3 of the 4 directions. My first attempt goes terrible because I didn't bring any buffs, and while I reach the second phase on my next attempt, I realize my dirt squares aren't big enough to fully block the teleports, so I die again, but with slightly bigger squares I'm ready for my next attempt. Since this is Master Mode, the Creepers and Brain give random debuffs, and while I could otherwise tank their damage normally, the Broken Armor debuff cuts my defense in half, which means I actually do have to dodge. The small size of the Creepers and the fact that they fly around means I have to manually summon my baby slime on top of them for the most part to hit them. I haven't fought the Brain of Cthulhu much since I mostly play on Corruption Worlds, so I had to relearn the attack pattern since I was taking a lot of unnecessary damage, but after a few minutes on my third attempt I finally got the hang of it. I still wish that I actually chose a Corruption World instead of a random world, because with Crimson as the world evil I am unable to acquire Wrath Potions until hard mode, and Rage Potions don't help me any because my slimes won't crit. Skipping ahead a bit in the fight, since it was quite tedious to kill the creepers, I finally make it to the second phase. I created a box hoping I could just AFK the rest of the fight, but my baby slime wasn't behaving very well, so the brain would sometimes get past him. As a result, the box actually got in the way a bit. I panicked quite a bit in the second phase, trying to run from the boss to heal up before the illusions fully appeared, but after nearly dying once they fully appeared, I realized I just had to commit and time my summoning perfectly to deal just enough knockback to keep the brain at bay. The battle was very tense, but I managed to hold my focus to the end. Finally, with the tissue samples from the brain, I can make my first summoner armor set, the obsidian armor. I just need to mine some obsidian, grab a hellforge, and die again before crafting up my new armor. Also, after over 900 hours in the game, I finally get the Supreme Helper Minion achievement. Thank you, Relogic. After that, I spent 2 hours in a Hoik loop killing the Dungeon Guardian, thinking about what to do next. But I'm not just killing the Dungeon Guardian for fun, I'm actually killing him for practice. If I fight Skeletron or Skeletron Prime and cannot defeat them before daytime, they won't despawn. They will actually become enraged and become much like the Dungeon Guardian until they kill me, at which point then they despawn. But this means even if I can't kill them before the night is up, I can always kill them after in the same way as the Dungeon Guardian. Funny enough, in the time it took to kill the Dungeon Guardian, I had not just 1 but 2 golden slimes spawn and hang out by the dungeon entrance ready to die once I was done. Before fighting another boss, I decided to give the Old One's army a few attempts, since the Dark Mage drops an item that can give me an extra 10% summon damage. Even with the block-swapped platform Hoik cheese, I couldn't even get far enough for the Dark Mage to spawn, since the Etherean Wyverns were simply too powerful. After getting tired of dying, I returned to the dungeon and prepared to fight Skeletron. But despite having a plan in case I can't kill him before night's up, I'd rather not have to use the Hoik loop already, so instead I max out the NPC cap with critters and dummies. The method isn't perfect and I run into a few issues, failing to spawn Skeletron at all, Blood Moon turning all my bunnies into vicious bunnies which kill all my other critters, failing to despawn either of the hands, only despawning one of the hands, and all this until finally I successfully despawn both hands, and he kills all my critters, so I have to make sure this attempt succeeds or waste a lot more time. By creating a platform with a roof above, I can have a safe haven from the skull projectiles between spin attacks, since Skeletron will aim to hover directly above the player. And since Skeletron moves fairly slowly with his spin attack, I can lead him along the flat ground so my baby slime can do some serious damage. It took some time to learn the best way to handle Skeletron's attack pattern, so I almost died again since this is Master Mode after all, but it all worked out in the end. My Dungeon Guardian pet actually confused me so much throughout that fight, since it looks exactly like the miniature Skeletron head, but eventually I remembered that I brought a Hunter Potion and drank that so Skeletron becomes much more visible. I made the ceiling at just the wrong height so my slime minions wouldn't jump up high enough to hit Skeletron's head, so I had to manually summon the slimes on him, but my damage was consistent enough, so I managed to defeat Skeletron with over a minute to spare before daytime. So now that I have 4 bosses down, I finally decide on a good spot for my relics on this house I made, and after placing them down, I head back to the boss arena to prepare to throw every cheese strategy I can think of at the Old One's army. There aren't many buffs left before I get far enough in the game that the Old One's army becomes even harder, and I'll need every buff I can get for hard mode, so it's now or never, as I even head out to the jungle to find a grindstone for another exploit. I've probably died to this event more times than anything else, so by the time I beat it, I had employed a large number of tricks to win. Trick 1. The block-swapped platform hoiks bypass the Old One's army's anti-cheat and prevent all ground enemies from making it to the crystal. This is the typical cheese everyone knows about. Trick 2. The grindstone's armor penetration doesn't affect just melee weapon damage, but actually affects all damage while you're holding a melee weapon. So by holding my pickaxe, my baby slimes gain 12 more armor penetration. Trick 3. The Old One's army actually spawns 160% of the enemies needed to complete the wave each wave. This means that by letting the minions pile up in wave 3 while at over 90% with enough already weakened minions to get over 100%, I can kill those weakened minions. Click the crystal to skip to wave 4 and kill the remaining minions to instantly get from 0% up to a maximum of 60% through wave 4, sometimes even making it all the way to wave 5 without seeing a single Ethereal Wyvern. Trick 4. Ethereal Wyverns target the player if they're close enough. With some finesse, you can use a rope above the Ethereal Crystal to deflect the Wyvern attacks away from it, while waiting for wave 5 to reach 50% and spawn the Dark Mage. Trick 5. The Ethereal Crystal can be hoiked. By actuating the floor into the crystal, the sand will break and the crystal will fall down. By then actuating blocks onto it, the crystal can be transported far away, buying me the much needed time to kill the Dark Mage, although I need to be careful not to hoik enemies along with it. Trick 6. A scummy trick I didn't want to use if I could help it. A simple invincibility machine using a slime spawn from a statue to damage me so nothing else can. Trick 7. Pray. It took me so many attempts to finally get this run that I actually ran out of money from reforging and buying pigranadas for bacon from the party. So after even running out of all that bacon, and only having one seafood dinner left as a buff, I prayed, God, let this be the last one. Lo and behold, God answered my prayer as I finished off the Dark Mage with a few seconds to spare before the Old One's army finished off the crystal. So I built a glass cross in recognition of this small gift and move on to the next step. The next boss I decided to fight was Deerclops. I've never fought Deerclops before, so it was a learning experience. I figured I'd make a setup to get a bunch of hearts with a heart statue, slime statue, and a couple of wall creeper statues, since the enemies from them can drop hearts on death, but I didn't end up using it a lot since it wasn't really that fast. I ended up almost dying, so I magic mirrored, intending to use my pylons to maybe go see the nurse to heal up before teleporting back since Deerclops won't despawn. But I quickly realized my mistake and had to take a long trip nearly 3/4 of the way across this large world to get back. Once I got back, I managed to lure Deerclops up to the small arena I prepared for him, and continue the fight properly, at which point I learned the pattern and killed him pretty easy and went to fight Queen. There's not a lot to say about Queen Bee. I decided I'd use the bee minions to invincibility cheese the boss, since I'd still kinda be tanking the boss's attacks that way, which felt less scummy to me than just bringing a slime statue in like before. Although since they're no different than any other bees, I just mined some hive blocks and used those, although after my first attempt failed, I realized that I needed a bit of regen for that, and the rest was smooth sailing. I also killed her twice for the honeycomb to make the stinger necklace, just in case I needed it. I decided to grab a bewitching table and finally prepared to fight the Wall of Flesh. In order to kill the Wall of Flesh, I decided to go all out with the most over-the-top hell bridge ever. I decided to exploit the wall's AI and squeeze it into a corridor where my baby slimes can hit it constantly and the eyes can't even see me. It took some testing to figure out I needed a 4-block thick ceiling and floor to compress the wall all the way, but I quickly learned to utilize dirt bombs. And in order to not dig up my entire world, I used dirt bombs and regular bombs to farm dirt, since by detonating them on a single block in open air, they produce twice as much dirt as you need to craft them. The hungry were making it difficult to stay close to the wall to keep my baby slimes attacking it, so I decided to despawn them, and it was at this point that I remembered the blood moon turning my bunnies vicious, and killing my critters, and I discovered that I can max out the NPC cap with a bunny statue during a blood moon. but when I ran out of bloody tears I used vicious powder on the bunnies instead. I'd try the fight over and over again, each time getting close, dying, building the arena up more, and repeat. I got the golf cart for the end of the fight, I reforged everything to menacing, I used the feral bite debuff, then finally I got this run. Okay, so I accidentally got the last hit with the golf cart, despite trying so hard to even kill all the leeches with just the slime staff. You all saw the clip before that though. With 38 health left, I only needed 3 hits and had plenty of health, so as far as the slime staff only challenge goes, I'm calling that a success. Finally, after nearly 50 hours and 100 deaths, we enter hard mode, and let me just tell you that the challenge doesn't end there. If you want to see me go all the way, then make sure to subscribe for part 2. Thanks for watching and God bless.